This morning in our Sunday Spotlight, the early days of ESPN. That's the name of a new book written by Peter Fox, who was one of the original employees of ESPN when it launched in September of '79. Peter Fox joins us from his home in North Carolina. Peter, welcome. Thank you for being with us. I have the book here. I read the book, and I know I can start with this. It didn't launch in '79, did it?
Oh, no, Eric. November 17th, 1978, we threw the first images up off Satcom 1.
So even though all that credit goes to 19...
that goes along with it if you're interested.
Yeah, all that credit goes to that 1979, that famous first clip that many of us have seen. But you and many other people were there, and you said you were there for 300 days before the launch. There's other books that have been written about the early days of ESPN and about ESPN's history. Why did you want to write this one? What did you hope to add to that narrative?
Well, Eric, there was a band of brothers and sisters who put ESPN on the air, and most of us, or many of us, let me say, were WFSB Channel 3 veterans. We put together a crew that when the big money folks were able to make ESPN real, kind of elbowed us out of the way a little bit. And I thought before the stories evaporated into the ether that somebody ought to tell them. So I talked with Bill Rasmussen, and he had written the original The Birth of ESPN. And so the early days of ESPN, with Bill's blessing, is bringing spotlights to some of those folks who otherwise never got any credit for doing and revitalizing and changing sports forever, actually.
Well, I can tell you, having worked in TV stations basically my whole adult life, I could imagine some of the conversations as you talked about one person after the next gave notice. I don't know if the chief engineer or someone like that. And then he himself left as well. I can imagine the panic in the hiring rooms. One of the stories I thought was so interesting was when you met with the videotape salesman who you said they sent a young salesman out, and he said, "How much tape do you need?" And you said, "Oh, well, we just have to record 24/7 for the rest of time." And he about fell off his chair, right?
Yeah, do the math, I said to him. Yeah, that was an amazing time. There are so many anecdotes like that I'm gearing up to bring on the road and entertain some folks. So I thought it was going to be a mic drop, but all of a sudden it's enervated me again. So. Off I go.
There you go. Well, as we said, the official beginning of ESPN was 1979, but you were there even before that. The meeting with the videotape salesman happened in Plainville before you even moved down to Bristol. As was one of the things just for people to wrap their head around this idea of sports. I mean, I know in the early days there was arm wrestling and some, UConn basketball preseason exhibition games and things, just anything to get that 24/7 filled. Was that part of it, just selling that dream? I know you quote Chris Berman in here saying he was like a Mercury astronaut.
Well, that's what we call ourselves. We call ourselves espionauts. But that first game that we did, we were hard pressed to put a couple of nickels together at the time. We hadn't run into the Getty Oil gusher of money yet. So renting an instant replay disc was beyond our budget. So I had fun. I hired the world's fastest cartoonist so that I had the world's slowest instant replay. We sat her courtside and she sketched plays. It was kind of a gas. We had fun doing a lot of things like that early on that have manifested in television over time, like miking coaches. I remember miking the baseball coach at UConn in one of those games, and I thought that was advanced until halfway through the first inning. I realized he chewed tobacco, and our audience had a wonderful expectoration sound that got killed immediately.
Well, that's it. You had to. It was trial and error, and you had to figure it out. You end the book interestingly with what's next. What does the future hold? We have less than a minute left, Peter. But what do you think the future holds? I mean, there's been so much change in the media landscape. As the guy who was there at the beginning, what's next for ESPN? Just 30 seconds left.
Well, you know what I did? I didn't know the answer to that, so I asked AI. I said, what's next? What would happen if you had to build ESPN today? And that's what the whole last chapter is written by AI, Google's Bard. I have a good relationship with Will Granis, the guy that runs the cloud out there at Google. So, um, there's so much to look forward to that streaming and digital is going to do to put the fan actually in the stadium. So uh, I think there's so much revolution to add to what we did 40 years ago.
Well, it is certainly. It is certainly an interesting take, and I know a lot of ESPN fans and certainly a lot of people who worked in the media will want to check this out. There's the book, The Early Days of ESPN, 300 Daydreams and Nightmares by Peter Fox. Get it now at your favorite bookstore. Peter, thank you for being with us here on CT24.